There is a new RB1 in Dynasty, but is that a mistake? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Behind the Steel Curtain, Pro Football Focus, and Yahoo. On today's show, we got a new batch of ADP courtesy of DynastyLeagueFootball.com. I got to say, it's fascinating. So we're going to go position by position over the next week or so, just giving you some of our most notable notes. Today, we're talking about the running backs. And we've got to start with the new RB1, Kate, Jahmyr Gibbs. What are your thoughts?
Marcus, I was floored when I saw this. Jahmyr Gibbs. So just for anybody who hasn't been following along, obviously had a great rookie season, but Dynasty RB1 has kind of just been in the corner of Atlanta Falcons rookie Bijan Robinson. So when I log in to see that Jahmyr Gibbs was the consensus RB1 in Dynasty startups, or the on average, the RB1 in Dynasty startup drafts, in this latest round of ADP, I was absolutely floored. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have a great season, right? As a rookie, averaged 14.4 fantasy points per game in half PPR formats, 12th in scrimmage yards among running backs, 9th in scrimmage touchdowns. He had 6 finishes inside the top 5. He went on an absolute tear midseason. But Marcus, I am probably more floored about this ADP just based on the fact that he ranked 27th among running backs with 15 touches per game. He obviously has a very talented running back playing alongside him, David Montgomery. We have a track record of this offense under Dan Campbell utilizing a 2 running back system. And guess what? It's, I think, limited the ceiling of these kind of high-end explosive players. Imagine what DeAndre Swift would have done in this offense if he wasn't competing for valuable touches with Jamal Williams. Now, I look at what Bijan Robinson did this year, more receiving yards, more rushing yards. He was slightly less efficient, but, I can't imagine a world where I'm taking Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan Robinson. How about you?
I'm with you. Now, I just want to be clear, the difference in these two players in terms of their ADP, I mean,
they're 1 and 2.
Well, yeah, they are, but listen to their overall ADP. Jahmyr Gibbs is 7.67 and Bijan Robinson is 7.83. I mean, so it's like one draft Gibbs going ahead of Bijan. So it's very, very small. But I'm with you. I don't get it. It feels very much to me like Gibbs is the splashier player with a little bit more hype on the better team, and that's why he's getting the slight edge over Bijan. But long term, there's just no way that I would take Gibbs over Bijan. I think the more interesting thing for me, Kate, and I really want your thoughts on this, is we have a pretty clear top, in my mind, top 4, but according to the other Dynasty players, no, a pretty clear top 4 when it comes to who are the running backs between Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and then Christian McCaffrey. Do you have Gibbs as your RB2, or can you make a case for Hall or McCaffrey over him?
I think you can make a case for both. Now, the big tiebreaker that I'm using here is the workload, Marcus. Like, I 100% agree that Jahmyr Gibbs might be the more efficient. He might be the most efficient running back over the next couple of years of that cohort here. But if I'm a dynasty manager, I'm looking at this group of running backs and saying, okay, which one of these can I realistically project for a workhorse role? Jahmyr Gibbs, I do think out of all three of these guys, we can probably project him for the lowest workload, which does mean that he is going to have to maintain that level of efficiency. And maintaining efficiency, like if I'm not getting a ton of touches, if I'm sharing these very valuable touches in the red zone, in the end zone, if I'm sharing those touches, like all you really have is that efficiency. And I think it's kind of a risky game to play with your RB1 because you can only have one of these guys, right? If you're drafting mid first round, you can only have one of these guys on your team. Jahmyr Gibbs is the last of the four that I want because I'm looking at these other three guys, even Kyron Williams behind him. And
I
yes,
will say the Kyron one messed me up a little bit because I'm like, if you just told me for like a 4-game stretch who I would rather have and not like in a dynasty, it would be Kyron. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I thought Gibbs is the right pick there. It's just, man, Kyron and that offense with as many touches as he gets, it's really hard to ignore him. Maybe he's the best value at the running back position.
maybe he is the best value. I'm just saying, like, when you look at this cohort specifically, there's one player that I feel like kind of stands out from the rest. Even Bijan Robinson, for as much, frustration as we had, like I said, outpaced, Jahmyr Gibbs, more receiving yards, more rushing yards. And that was with a head coach that we saw him rotating in and out of the mix at very inappropriate times, like for what most would consider the kind of usage you should expect for your number 8 overall pick. I do think with a new head coach, with a new scheme, and we talked about this on our mailbag episode. For those of you who didn't listen to Wednesday's show, go back, take a listen. We did a mailbag with Matt, and we talked a bit about the number of coaches that the Falcons have interviewed. All but one, I believe, have a defensive background, which I think plays into this defense ball control style offense. And I think that is going to continue to favor Bijan really heavily. And the competition, I think, for touches is going to be much different between Bijan and Algier than it is for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery moving forward.
All right. The last thing I want to say on Gibbs, and actually I'm gonna make it pro Gibbs argument. I would rather have Bijan, but when you compare him to Breece Hall and Christian McCaffrey, the contract situation does matter to me. Gibbs is in the first year of his rookie deal. He's likely to get a 5th-year option because Detroit spent a high pick on him. So that means 4 more years of him being on this Lions team, where you have Breece Hall, 2nd-round pick. He's got 2 years left with the Jets. He's coming off. He had a big injury during his rookie season, played really well this year. I also worry about what that franchise is going to look like in 2 years after this Aaron Rodgers stuff goes away. And then Christian McCaffrey, he's 27 years old. I don't need to go into that too much, but it just seems like probably McCaffrey is going to be there next year. And then beyond that, who knows? I think in terms of stability, he's probably the most stable of those other 3 running backs. So that's why I would have him as RB2. But I can't justify putting him ahead of Bijan. I just can't.
I definitely agree with you. And, to be clear, this also kind of goes into a philosophical type of discussion about what kind of roster are you looking to build. If you're in a dynasty startup right now and you're about to make your 1st-round pick, I think you need to take a good long look at sort of what your goals are, because if you are going to be gunning for a championship right out of the gate, then Christian McCaffrey is probably a good pick. If you're looking to just build a young roster with a lot of potential that could be a very long-term sort of asset, which obviously that's always a goal in dynasty, but that might be the sort of deciding factor. I think that's a question you have to ask yourself when you're in the 1st round of a dynasty startup is, what do you envision for the totality of that team?
All right, Kate, let's move on and talk about some of the best values at the running back position with our latest batch of Dynasty League ADP. We will get to that next. This segment is brought to us by our sponsor at BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you how I feel about something. I've been thinking about this a lot this week, and maybe you've been thinking about the same. Kate, you and I have been fans of football teams, the Cowboys and the Steelers, who have a combined 6 playoff wins since 2011. It's really frustrating to root and to cover these teams for the last decade and a half or however many years. It only see 3 playoff wins. It bothers you a little bit. That's a lot of time that we invest into our teams, and to not get the success that you want can be really frustrating. So there you go. I feel a little bit better. That's some therapy between you and I. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have much, much bigger problems than our favorite sports team. And it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. But if you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and convenient, and you can suit it to your schedule. You can visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Kate, let's talk about our some of our favorite values with this recent batch of ADP. Who do you got?
I want to talk about Tennessee Titans rookie running back Tajay Spears, who comes into this round of Dynasty ADP. I think a pretty solid value here, even though he's probably a little bit pricier than maybe I even expected here. RB18 in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP. 22 years old. And you know what, Marcus? There is probably nobody that is set for a bigger upcoming workload. Obviously, there is a lot of time. There's free agency, there's the draft. TBD on sort of how things shake out. But I got to be so impressed with Spears's rookie season with the Titans, playing the backup role here with Derrick Henry obviously being the workhorse. 838 scrimmage yards, 3 touchdowns, ranked 11th in receiving yards among all running backs. Among running backs with 100 plus carries, 4th in with a 26% missed forced tackle rate, tied Bijan for the 13th best yards per carry average at 4.5, 3.1 yards after contact per attempt. Like, from an efficiency standpoint, great. From the standpoint of looking at the involvement as a receiver, we love to see that, especially in PPR formats. We've seen him sustain a pretty heavy workload, which I think is kind of important considering coming out of Tulane. Obviously, there was some concerns about his health, about his knee. There was a lack of ACL, I think is the narrative there. But we saw at Tulane, saw his workload increase every single season. Final year, 15, just under 1,600 rushing yards, average 6.9 yards per carry. And again, really love to see that sort of usage in the receiving game for this offense. Now, again, things can change, very quickly, as we know, but it seems, given the 3rd round draft capital, given the departure of Derrick Henry, he said his goodbyes to this fan base. Tajay Spears could be RB1. And I think by all accounts, everything that he showed on the field this year should have fantasy managers really encouraged about his potential future as a dynasty asset.
So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that Tennessee is going to bring in another running back here. Like, it's not going to be just Tajay Spears and nobody else. But I think what you're hoping for, if you are a Tajay Spears dynasty manager, is that it's not a draft pick like in the first 4 rounds. And it's just one of these guys that's like I don't know. I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think like of a name that would be like not very intimidating, like somebody better than the Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt's old, but like in that type of range of a running back, maybe they bring in a Deontay Foreman or something like that. Right. Because I think you're right. Like, I think there's a chance that he is the RB1. He's getting 18 to 19 touches a game, and maybe he's not handling some of the goal line stuff and the short yardage stuff. but he's the guy that every week is the biggest part of the game plan. And you can get that player outside of the top 16 running backs. I'm in. Especially, you mentioned the ACL, right? Like I really worry about him after his rookie contract, but when it comes to dynasty running backs, you're really only looking at like a 3-year window anyways. I think these next 3 years are going to be really good for him. I really do.
Yeah, and especially in a full PPR format, I think he could be one of these guys that just ends up being a week in, week out value with a pretty steady floor, just thanks to some of that receiving production. Marcus, let's hear your pick for best value right now in dynasty startup drafts.
I'm shocked that Brian Robinson is going outside the top 25. I mean, in year 2, he was more efficient. He had more yards. He scored more touchdowns. He caught more passes. You also look at like this running back position in Washington. Like I think Antonio Gibson's going to be on. The offensive line was not good for most of the year. They had a lot of injuries. Sam Howell didn't progress as a quarterback, and Washington's defense was so bad that they really never had the opportunity just to lean on the run game. There's obviously going to be a new head coach here with Ron Rivera gone. I just look at Brian Robinson as somebody who was better than he was as a rookie. He can do everything. He's a 3-down back. He could be somebody who gets 230 touches next year, and I don't think that would be crazy at all. I want to buy Brian Robinson. I want both B Robinsons on my team this year. I think he's just a really solid RB2 with some upside.
I think that's fair. I think my biggest point of hesitancy with Brian Robinson is Chris Rodriguez Jr., who played behind him this year, was a rookie, averaged 4.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, outpaced him in yards after contact per attempt, 10 plus like explosive run rate.
But I think he can be a really good number 2. It just doesn't phase me all that much because, again, it's the same thing as Tajay. Like, they're going to bring in somebody else or have somebody else take some of the workload here. If it's Chris Rodriguez, it's fine. I'm okay with it.
Okay. I think that's fair. I am not as on board with Brian Robinson, but if he comes out, and that purely stems from my hesitancy that he's going to be the guy, right? And if he is the guy, and if I'm totally off base here, you've got a heck of a value for where he's being drafted.
Yeah, I just look at like in the middle chunk of the year when they weren't playing the super daunting schedule, like he was pretty effective, like against Seattle, 8 carries for 38 yards, whatever, 6 for 119 and a touchdown as a receiver. Against New England, he was effective. Against the Eagles, in both Eagles games, he played well. I just think at that price, it just doesn't really cost you all that much. And it won't be surprised if we're ranking him as like a top 14 running back every single week.
Fair.
Okay. Any other running backs out there you wanna mention before we move on?
No, I want to talk about some price mismatches here. Who are we not buying at their ADP? That's a fun question.
Most running backs, but there are a couple that really stick out. We will get to them next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move that I can make that'll take my business to the next level? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have this many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats right now, it might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is so quick and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront so that you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers. On tomorrow's show, I believe we're talking about ADP stuff with the wide receiver position. On Monday's show, we're going to break down all of the action from the divisional round of the playoffs. Busy time here in the Locked On Dynasty show. Even though your fantasy leagues are over, doesn't mean that we stop here on Locked On Dynasty. But Kate, let's talk about some mismatch prices when it comes to the running back position. Who do you have?
This might get me a world of hate, and I'm so sorry if it does. I do not understand the dynasty value of Devon A. Chan, RB7 in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP. Am I wildin'? Now, I'm going to be clear. And I'm going to state off the top here that I understand that his performance as a rookie was absolutely insane. Average 7.5 yards per carry, 4.9 yards after contact per attempt, a 28% missed forced tackle rate. All of those metrics rank top 3 among running backs. He was an absolute force, okay? And I get it. But I feel like I'm going crazy here because he is 5'9", 188 pounds with, obviously all the speed in the world, but the injuries coming out of the gate at that size, when size was one of your biggest question marks, they're concerning. And in 2022, his final season at A&M, had a foot injury, missed 2 games, had a shoulder sprain in the preseason, then missed week 1, knee injury in week 5, placed on IR, came back in week 11, re-aggravated the injury after 3 snaps, missed the following week again. He had it was issue after issue. And again, I know that injuries can be kind of a fickle thing, but when I'm looking at Achan, and one of my biggest hesitancies with him coming out was his lack of size, and will that affect his durability? It does seem like there's something to it. He played 12 of 18 total games for the Dolphins this season. And then, Marcus, there's the other question, okay? Is Achan scheme dependent? Because obviously he is the fastest running back coming out of this draft class. And, as long as he can run faster, as long as he can, force one missed tackle right around the line of scrimmage, he's probably taken it to the house, which is what we saw a lot. But T2 scheme dependent. And how many different, NFL offenses would Achan work in? And both of those things combined have me wondering, can we really invest in Achan, even despite the production, at RB7? RB7.
So there are things in there I agree with. The injury concern, like he's small. Yeah, he is small. Here's why I'm not necessarily upset about that price, because the upside is so big. And a couple things. Miami is so limited in what they can do roster construction wise this year. Because they've traded away a lot of picks. They're so up against the salary cap. Raheem Mostert is 31 years old, and my bet is that they're going to try to bring him back. But he was banged up at the end of the year, right? And he has not been the most durable player throughout his NFL career. They have Jeff Wilson, who's also been an older running back that can't stay on the field. So I just wonder, this is probably the backfield that Miami's going to have this year. Like the same backfield we saw at the end of the year is probably the backfield that they're going to have in 2024. With Wilson and Mostert being older, I just think that opens up more opportunities for him to get even more work. I think I'm okay with the price here. I don't love it. I'm not advocating that you go out and buy as much of Devon Achan as possible. But I can understand the reasoning for having him ranked this high.
12 or fewer touches in 9 of 12
I know.
games this year.
I know, but the good thing with him is he only needs like 7 to be fantasy relevant, right? And I do think this offense is going to be really good because Mike McDaniel's really good. They're going to have a quarterback locked up in Tua, which we can talk about Tua and his value long term. But I think this offense is just going to be really good, really productive, and there's going to be those boom weeks like we saw multiple times this year where if you have him in your lineup, you're going to win your matchup that week. There's only a handful of running backs like that, and you're just going to have to suffer through some of the down weeks. I think that's okay at RB7.
All right. I think that's fair. But when you have a running back that is not getting a ton of touches, you better rely on efficiency. And boy, if you have a guy that's always banged up, Marcus, and we saw in the second half of the season, was not nearly as efficient as he was in the first half prior to that knee injury. You're banking on efficiency with those touches. I'm not saying he can't get it. I'm just saying for him to live up to RB7 and in that price tag, everything has to go perfectly right. And to this point, I don't know that I've seen enough to believe that everything will go right 100% of the time, but maybe this is me being a wet blanket. Who are you fading at their current price?
I need someone to explain the Javonte Williams thing with me because Javonte Williams just finished up his year 3 season with the Broncos, going into the final year of his contract, has a major knee injury in his medical history. And I mean, he was fine this year, Kate. I mean, was he somebody that you were excited to start every single week? Absolutely not. I don't get it. I don't see the upside. It's clear that Sean Payton likes to rotate his running backs. Samaje Perine was playing in there a little bit. We had several different like no-name running backs getting touches while Javonte Williams was healthy. Who is buying Javonte Williams at RB17? Because there's so many names behind him, including your guy, Tajay Spears, Najee Harris for me, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones. All those guys I would rather have going forward than Javonte Williams.
I mean, all of your concerns very valid. Averages 3.6 yards per attempt in his return from the torn ACL, 3.8 yards per touch. He did get plenty of receiving work, actually hit a season high or a career high 58 targets. Just wasn't efficient this year. And I think there are a lot of questions here for this Denver Broncos offense. I do think Javonte Williams and his upside when he's 100%, maybe we see him kind of get over that initial hurdle after year 1 returning from the ACL. Maybe we see him, return to full form and miss forced tackles and yards after contact. And maybe that's the Javonte Williams we see in 2024. Maybe. But then you have to worry he's going to be on the end of his rookie contract. And what's next? I get it.
I just don't. The other thing is that situation in Denver. I mean, they're moving on from Russell Wilson. Do they draft a quarterback? They have Jarrett Stidham now. Like, is the quarterback situation going to suddenly be better than it was a year ago? Probably not. I don't know, man. This one I just don't get. I don't get it at all.
I think that's fair. I get the upside because I love Javonte Williams as a player. I love his running style. But again, there's a lot of circumstantial, circumstances floating around here for Javonte Williams that can give you some hesitancy about investing in that price.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the show on YouTube, Locked On Dynasty. We post videos every single day over there. Kate's been uploading a ton of shorts. Check those out as well. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Maju. Check out her work at Pro Football Focus, Behind the Steel Curtain, and Yahoo. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We will see you right back here tomorrow.